Hello everyone, this is the Phoenix 24. Seeing as it is the 6-month anniversary of my most popular video, Twelfth Night, I thought I would give you all 20 facts about the behind the scenes elements of Twelfth Night that some of you may be interested in. In the opening and later scene, you'll find that there is lots of TARDIS noises going off in the background rather subtly. This was actually a last-minute addition because I realised that the entire episode takes place inside someone or other's TARDIS, and that all the way throughout, the 12th Doctor's TARDIS is making subtle sound effects, and yet in this scene there are 7 Doctor's TARDISes, and later on there are at least 11 various Doctor's TARDISes, and yet they made no noise whatsoever. So as a sort of joke to myself that I had created an episode entirely based inside the TARDIS, without knowing it, and also the idea that there were this many TARDISes, I added in the TARDIS noises. Originally I created a basic version of the Series 7 title sequence, so that this episode would look more like an official BBC episode of Doctor Who. But when I uploaded a test of this episode to make sure it got past copyright, there was a flag for the music and the visuals of the Doctor Who title sequence. I did this quite late on, so I started to wonder to myself, how am I going to get the title sequence in here? Originally I thought I could use somebody else's title sequence that they had made, but I wanted this to be an entirely original product by myself. So I suddenly remembered that I had created some months ago a 10th anniversary title sequence as my first video, which I hadn't planned for this video whatsoever. But I thought it would be quite a nice idea to have all the Doctors involved and have a title sequence with all the Doctors' face in it, so I quickly created an opening and ending sequence and then put in my previous video just to make up the seconds. Originally I created this as the very first shot, as a test of how to do my editing of putting the first Doctor inside the 12th Doctor's TARDIS. Then I realised in the original shot the time rotor is on the left, and I wanted to have him in the same location in the TARDIS, so in the new TARDIS when he materialises the TARDIS console was also on the left in that one. But then as a last minute change I realised that later on when it shows the other side of him, he's on the opposite side of the TARDIS, and throughout he's on the same side of the TARDIS. So I had the option of either having him materialise in a different area of the TARDIS, or have him move for no apparent reason during the episode. At one point I tried to mirror the shot, but it was quite obvious that William Hartnell's face was on backwards, and I had actually deleted the project that I had done this materialisation in because I didn't think I would ever use it. So I had to recreate the entire shot and recreate the materialisation effect to make him arrive on the correct side of the TARDIS. Most of the script was created around William Hartnell's lines because I knew I could do a rough 12th Doctor impression, but I would struggle with the first Doctor, and I wanted most of his lines to come from William Hartnell's original dialogue. So I wrote most of the script from classic Doctor Who clips I found online. But then when it came to actually making his mouth move, I couldn't find these audio clips again. So the majority of the episode was impersonated. But if you know the classic series very well, you'll probably notice that all the lines that I impersonate of him, 90% of them are actually William Hartnell's lines that I could actually have him speaking. This line of William Hartnell's first Doctor saying Doctor Who to the 12th Doctor was actually created entirely for the trailer. I wrote it in as a joke, and I thought I would develop it into the script so it seemed like it was necessary to the episode rather than just being a trailer joke. And then I realised, when I came to editing it, how complicated it is to get William Hartnell's mouth to move with this much of a straight-on performance, which is why you can quite obviously tell that is not the first Doctor's original mouth moving. I've always wondered why the classic series doors had the roundels on the inside, and yet it had the police box doors on the outside whenever they cut between the shots, and yet in the modern Doctor Who, that is, the police box doors also on the inside shown in reverse, and I wanted an explanation for this. And I thought it would be one of the first things that the first Doctor would want to mention. So I came up with the idea that when the TARDIS interior changed, it had become a police box for so long, it decided to actually make the police box doors part of the official TARDIS design. This is where the piece of dialogue came from. Originally when I planned this idea, it was just a little silly idea. and I wanted to have many moments where the Doctor would be pushing buttons and the TARDIS console would change as his hands are on it. Anyway, I created this shot, which many people liked, and then when I came to the end of editing the episode, I watched it back and realised that I had forgotten I wanted to do many more of these shots. So I created these two as, I think, the last two shots of editing. When I edited it, the crop matched Peter Capaldi's body perfectly, and yet when I rendered it, it was all out of sync, and this was very irritating. When I came to have the TARDIS spinning around Big Ben, I noticed that I wanted to have a close-up shot, and I couldn't think of what time because many shots of Big Ben have got different times on them, and I wanted it to be something specific. I like to make sure lots of little details are involved in the scene. So I decided to have one hand pointing at 12 and one hand pointing at 1 as a little Easter egg for the conception of this video. Again, this is one of the earlier shots that I did in the editing process, and in fact one of the later shots in the planning process. But when I played it back, after many times, I started to realise that there was no animation on the bridge, as though Earth had somehow been frozen in time, and I thought it looked very unrealistic. So again, as one of the final pieces of editing, I added on a few extra cars moving. I realised at a certain point in the editing process that as this was an episode with so many new lines, that I would have to have the Doctor's mouth move throughout the episode, and I didn't really know how to do this effect, so I decided I would have maybe 2 or 3 shots of each Doctor's mouth animated to move, and the rest of the time it would be done through the back of their heads and the opposite Doctor reacting to their lines. Through editing and looking for the material, I found that it is almost impossible to find the back of an actor's head online. So every time you see the back of the Doctor's head, it is in fact the first Doctor's being haircut footage, and the 12th Doctor's was again a modelling shot of a black suit and some random person I found online with grey hair. Originally, during the hologram scene, I used the 9th Doctor's theme, but again, when I uploaded this as a test, it came up with a copyright fault. But I wanted to keep this music because it seemed so perfect, so I slowed down the 9th Doctor's theme, and I combined it with the 10th Doctor's theme, and I did many edits of this, many re-uploads, until finally it got past copyright. And many people have asked what this piece of music was, so I'm hoping that you all enjoyed my version. As many of you have probably noticed, 12th Day was a deleted scene from 12th Night. The reasoning for this is that between this shot of the first Doctor disappearing and then him coming back, I wanted to have a sort of Day of the Doctor moment where holograms appearing in his TARDIS, much like what the moment did in Day of the Doctor. But due to creating the whole episode in time, and also the fact that I didn't want to spoil the ending involving the first Doctor's TARDIS, this disappeared. And I thought later on I didn't want to miss anything out of this episode because I wouldn't be able to return to it once it had been uploaded. So I thought I would create it as a spin-off episode, and then the concept changed and got much darker and darker, and I slowly developed it into this horrific idea of the first Doctor being on Gallifrey with the skeletons. I decided that I would have footage of all the other Doctors being recruited rather than just the first Doctor and the 12th Doctor scene. And the very first one of these that I did was the 11th Doctor and the 6th Doctor. But I struggled to find footage of the 6th Doctor, so I settled for this scene.
Most people do. I can't be doing with this atmospheric lighting nonsense. That is a first.
In the end, I decided that it was a silly idea because the 6th Doctor's footage was very poor quality, and also he is older than the rest of the Doctors are in the episode for no apparent reason. So I created this scene instead. This originated from looking online and through magazines where many people had mentioned that the 7th Doctor appears twice in Day of the Doctor, and I wanted there to be some in-continuity reason why this had happened. So I decided that the 1st Doctor and the 12th Doctor had become late, and therefore he recruited a second version of himself. I also added this fantastic, and then another TARDIS appears, supposedly the 9th Doctor, which I later realised that this would actually symbolise an extra TARDIS being involved, which would be the second Seventh Doctor's TARDIS. When I went through the process of uploading it, as I did earlier with the footage of the title sequence, the Gallifrey stand sequence was originally the full sequence from Day of the Doctor, and it got a copyright flag. So I had lots of decisions to make on how I would display this footage, and I decided that it would all take place inside the Doctor's TARDIS monitor, and I had to skillfully edit this so that the footage could not be recognised online. This isn't really a deleted moment or a behind the scenes secret, but I wanted to just point it out because I was very proud of it. Is that in this earlier scene with the hologram, when Amy says together or not at all, this was only put in specifically so it would match this shot later on. In my original plan for Gallifrey Stands, I was going to have the original 3 speeches by the Doctors replaced with a whole sequence where every Doctor in order would say a catchphrase, but then I realised that I couldn't find the footage for them. For example, I wanted to have the 5th Doctor replace his Braveheart Tegan with Braveheart Doctors, but I couldn't find any of the footage that I needed, so I scrapped this idea and just put Fantastic in there. Then towards the end I realised that this may be my only shot to create this video and I don't like to leave any footage hanging, so I amended this by inserting this scene instead.
Oh my word!
Everybody lives!
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flows and the TARDIS will be through the force field now.
We're fighting time itself! And I'm gonna win!
All systems go!
Let's see what we're made of.
Look from Gallifrey, boys!
Due to the changes in Gallifrey Stands with the copyrighted music, and also the addition of this sequence with all the Doctors saying their catchphrases, the line
Do it, Doctor. Just do it.
was originally out of time with the music, and every time I tried to synchronise it in different ways it became very obvious. So instead what I did was got a plain piece of music, and I did an impersonation of the General, which is why in the credits I am credited as the voice of him. I managed to find an image of the first Doctor's TARDIS online for this shot of the 12th Doctor walking into it. However, it stuck out to me just before I did one of the later tests that there was the 7th Doctor's umbrella in the shot. So, again, I had deleted this file much as I did with the One Day I Shall Look Back scene. So I had to take this file, crop out the 12th Doctor, and remove the 7th Doctor's umbrella so that nobody would notice that he's actually inside the wrong TARDIS. Originally, I was just going to have the episode end with Gallifrey Stands, and I wanted to have a little bit of a more rounded up ending to connect all the loose ends. So I had the idea that the first Doctor would materialise inside the 12th Doctor's TARDIS as my final little idea. And in fact, originally the dialogue was going to last a lot longer, but in the end I decided to leave it to a few short lines.
How did you know I would do it?
Essentially what I knew was that you would have always made the best choice. I have faith that you would always make the right choice.
Good to know my future's in safe hands.
So there we go, there are 20 facts about Twelfth Night. I would like to thank each and every viewer, sharer, subscriber, commenter and liker for the amazing view count on Twelfth Night. In fact, it is probably 90%, if not more, of the entire view count of this channel. I only expected it to get a small amount of views. Originally I said if it got 200 views I'd be happy. And now I'm looking down the business end of 30,000 views, so I'm extremely appreciative. And I'm constantly trying to think of new projects, as channel fillers, but also to try and beat Twelfth Night and keep all of you viewers entertained, to show my appreciation of what I've created so far. So I hope you enjoy what's to come on this channel. If anyone has any ideas for videos, impersonations, little ideas, I'd be more than happy to consider any of them. But for now, this has been Phoenix 24, and I'll see you.